Hey guys, so I want to talk a little bit about a song I posted maybe a couple days ago now. um, and that is O Gloriosa Domina, and that is written by the composer Michael Head. And actually, this piece is, I believe, the second of a set of three in what's called a song cycle. And if you don't know what that means, a song cycle in classical music means songs that are connected, but they're not like a plot, if that makes sense. Like some of them are just songs that kind of follow like a character in a lifetime, and it's all these different things that they go through, and these songs are like moments that are captured, right? But they don't necessarily have to be related in the poetry or in the really the through line of the text. There are other things that can connect them, and that is completely at the discretion of the composer. So song cycles are something that we sing a lot as classical singers. In undergrad, I did a whole bunch of them for recitals and that kind of thing. So I think it's actually, I love art song in general, and again, that's another term that maybe you're not familiar with. Art song means that it is music that is taken and composed just for the sake of those songs. They are not from a greater work like an opera, okay? But anyway, I love art song. I think it is some of the best music out there, as much as I love my opera, and that is my favorite thing to do on stage. Art song really has my heart. And I think it's because there's just so many different musical feelings that can come out in art song that are very different from opera. Opera is over the top in very dramatic ways. Art song is sort of your heart and soul poured out onto a platter, but not in a way that is, oh my God, and someone's gonna die by the end. You know what I mean? Someone's gonna be murdered on stage. It's just a whole different experience, at least in my mind. Anyway, so I wanted to tell you a little bit about Michael Head. Kind of an interesting name there. He was born in 1900, and he is a British composer. So he began studying music at the age of 12, and actually was taking, I believe, piano lessons from a pupil of Clara Schumann's. And if you are a classical musician or know anything about classical music, you may have heard of Clara Schumann before, or even just Schumann, who we refer to as Schumann. Clara Schumann, in her own right, was a wonderful composer. And if you haven't heard anything of hers, look her up because she's fantastic. But anyway, I thought it was interesting that he studied with a pupil of hers. So for most of Michael Head's composing career, he composed just songs, what I would call art song, right? But by the end of his career, he did start composing some other things like opera, and I believe there's even like a symphonic tone poem or something in there. Don't quote me on that though. Do your own homework. But what I thought was interesting is that he was fairly prolific, but he spent the bulk of his career writing songs for voice and piano. It should be noted that while in addition to playing piano, like I mentioned earlier, he would sing all of his compositions too in sort of a one-man show, which is really interesting. There's a breadth of music that's actually meant to be performed that way. Parlor songs or some such thing is what you would call that. But I love that you can hear that he knew how to write for the voice. There are some composers who are primarily instrumentalists, and that I'm not saying that they can't write beautiful music for the voice, but the way that Michael Head writes, it's interesting to me how well he does for the voice, and I think that's because he had to sing what he wrote, so he wasn't going to make you do anything too terrible, you know? Everything is very comfortable, and the line is just beautiful, and if those are terms that you don't that you don't understand, I don't blame you. You're not a singer. If you are a singer, then you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so little tidbits. As I was refreshing my memory on my Michael Head facts, I came across something that I also thought was kind of neat in that I guess Michael Head had a little bit of a reputation as an adjudicator of students of music. And what I liked about that is that he was said to have been very good at combining praise where it was due and criticism in a positive manner. And as my own, as a teacher myself, that is absolutely what I try to do. I think in music, there's a lot of emphasis on perfection out in the world of performing and that kind of thing. And that's why, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there aren't a lot of opera singers on YouTube that talk to their audience at all. There are plenty that will post their videos of performances and that kind of thing, and that's wonderful. But I think as a whole, we're kind of terrified of being out there because in our line of work, perfection really is the standard. But honestly, as a performer and as a teacher and just as a person, I think that's pretty messed up. That kind of came to be around the time that we started hearing CDs of opera performances. Previously, recordings on records and that kind of thing, they were done very differently, and they weren't cut and pasted together in such a way as to make it sound as if the performer was able to really keep every single note in that perfect place always, right? And it can be very daunting as singers to listen to that and to think, oh, that's how I have to be. And in my own little way, in my own little corner, okay, I'm a musician, I can't help it, it all comes to my head. In my own little way, I am trying to change that for myself and for my students and for the others around me. I want everyone to know that this kind of study takes decades. There is no one that is finished. Even when you think you're finished, that's when it's probably not good, because you always need to check in and see if things are working right and see if things actually sound the way that you're hearing them sound in your head. Side note, they never actually do. That's why recordings are really helpful. But anyhow, I just thought it was very cool that he was a guy that saw a benefit to being kind as well as critical in his assessments of students. I think that that's a really important piece. Anyway, my own personal connection to this song is that if you watched my other video, the recording of this, you may have seen at the very end a picture of my grandmother, and that's because my grandmother passed away. Actually, she went into hospice right as I was opening a show, and she passed away a few weeks later. And this song I just felt was perfect for her funeral. She was a devout Catholic, and very liberal Catholic, but a Catholic. And I felt like the text to this actually was just perfect for that. Now, I will say I sang it as I did in the recording in Latin for her funeral, but the English translation is actually written, the poetic translation, is written by Nancy Bush, who is the sister of Michael Head, who actually married another composer with the last name of Bush. So Michael Head and his brother-in-law were actually buddies, and they learned a lot from each other. So let me read you this text real quickly, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as I do. I don't think you have to be religious to appreciate the beauty of this. So, O Blessed Virgin, Maid most holy, of heavenly stars the fairest, Lord of the sky thy child became, bearing a crown of innocence. O Blessed Virgin, Maid most pure, the loss of Eve, who fell from grace, thou hast again restored to us. Thou once again to sinful man opened the gates of paradise. O Blessed Virgin, Maid most pure, thou art the way to heaven's mystery, most shining light of the firmament. Since the Virgin has our life renewed, let all the nations rejoice. O Blessed Virgin, Maid most pure. Amen. And I hope that my grandmother is sitting up in paradise somewhere, having the time of her life. Anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed learning a little bit about Michael Head and his music, and a little bit about what motivated me to sing that song for you guys. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next one.